earlier in my career life, I was a big time student of leadership. I was in positions of leadership, and almost nothing will make you more hungry to understand more and more about leadership than having to lead and knowing that you're inadequate. So I I studied leadership pretty avidly, read tons of books, went to conferences and seminars, picked people's brains. One of the things that I learned, uh, probably I didn't need to read the 150 or so books I did on leadership to get, and I probably didn't need to go to any of the conferences I went to in order to get this. I observed it in one of the guys who was the senior pastor in one of my ministries. Here's the principle: people will follow a confident leader. That's it, pretty much. Now, this confident leader can demonstrate themselves to be competent or not, and that will, in terms of their long-term leadership, that's going to have a huge bearing on those who follow and with what enthusiasm they follow. But to gain a following, honestly, you don't have to have great competency, but you do need strong confidence. Now, there's a whole lot of confident leaders in the church who probably don't have quite the grounds they think they have to be confident. There are a lot of competent leaders who don't demonstrate confidence, but there are those where they hit that midpoint where they are both competent and confident. And when people follow them, generally, good things happen. Oh, I left out the third C. You've got confidence, competence, and character. And when those three align, good things happen in churches, in businesses, in other nonprofits, in any enterprise, because every enterprise requires leadership. The fundamental organization, the fundamental enterprise in the world, and has been from the beginning, is the family. When moms and dads have these three C's aligning, competence, confidence, and character, good things happen. Well, okay, that's my little, I don't know. I hope it wasn't like a rage or a rant, but I have strong feelings about it, and that's my observation. Why would I do that when we're really in the book of 1 John chapter 5? Because that first C, the confidence thing that I talked about, it shows up here, and it's in verse 14. This is the confidence we have in approaching God. You know, the Hebrew writer says, let us come boldly to the throne of grace. There's a difference between boldness and arrogance. The arrogant demands. The bold requests with confidence. That's where we are, okay? This is where John, it's almost as though he makes this as the assumption of where we're going to be coming from. This is the confidence we have in approaching God. A little bit pause there. Do you feel confident in your approach to God? I think there are a lot of Christians who do not feel confident, and sometimes this is because we've been taught that humility, at the root of humility, is understanding our humiliation in relationship to the perfection of God. By that I mean we are but worms. And I had a professor in college who said he really resented worm theology. That theology that says we're in God's sight we're just worms. No, we're not. We're sons and daughters. We are co-heirs, co-inheritors with Jesus. Well, that takes us way out of the worm category. We can have confidence when we approach God. Where does that confidence come from? That's what John says next. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. Two things. According to his will, he hears us. We talked about according to his will. This is both simple and complex. It's simple in the sense that God's moral will has been clearly stated. It's complex because within his moral will, there are often many options available to us. Some are more wise than others. And our challenge and privilege is to select the wisest of the options as far as we can tell. Now, I feel like I always have to come back to it, and this is because I always have to remind myself. In chapter 1 of the book of James, James writes, if any of you lacks wisdom, she should ask of God, who gives to all generously without finding fault, and it will be given to them. This is huge, in my opinion. To make the wisest choice among all the options within God's moral will, sometimes I have what I need to evaluate with wisdom. And others, I lack wisdom enough to choose well. And how wonderful that I have this open invitation. Ask for wisdom. And so ask. See, if we have confidence in approaching God, because when we ask anything according to his will, he hears us, some of that confidence surely comes from us knowing that when we don't feel wise, we can ask him, and he gives to us generously. Do you realize part of what that means is, as if you could quantify wisdom, but it basically means he's going to give you more than you need. Isn't that what generosity does? It grants more than is actually only needed. All right. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, and that takes wisdom, it also takes study, he hears us. I'm probably the only one that ever feels this, that there are times in my prayers I don't think they even get to the ceiling. It feels like I'm just, talking into the air. Am I? No. God hears me. Now, don't don't misunderstand that for God to hear me equals God will always do what I ask. Well, that's not the point. but he hears me. Being a grandpa has given me amazing insight, I think, into how God deals with us. There are times that when my grandkids were really young, they just babbled. They were just learning language, right? I listened. and I didn't say, okay, kid, till you can start forming words, you need to keep it to yourself, okay? You're bugging me. Are you kidding? I laughed. I delighted in hearing their babble. And then as they got older, some of the things they said, if you've had kids or grandkids, you know how this is. Man, I wish I had written it down because they just cracked me up. And then there are other things that they say that are so tender and so innocent and so beautiful that they touch my heart deeply. I don't want to make God into a grandpa. I certainly don't want to make God like me. But I sense an insight there that God listens. I mean, he really listens. I have this confidence when I approach God that if I ask anything according to his will, he listens. I even think if my request really amounts to, in the broadest cosmic sense, just babble, I think he listens to that too. But I know when I ask anything according to his will, he listens. Now, there's one aspect of according to his will that is worth touching on, although it's not the point. It is his will that I ask. I had a good friend give me great, hopeful advice once. My mom was, the last 8 or 10 years of her life were just horrible for her. Physically. Everything that, it felt like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. A series of strokes, dementia, then Alzheimer's, post-polio syndrome, awful. And I found myself praying for God, just please let up, make it let up. And then I thought, well, that's, how do I know that's what God wants? A friend of mine said, hey, Steve, it's never wrong to ask. Go ahead. There's no sin in asking. I may have wrong motives. I may have uneducated, uninformed, unwise motives, ungodly even. But to ask, that's not wrong. That helped me. Ask. Because there is this sense that when I ask, I am pursuing his will. His will is that I ask. And when I ask, he hears. Now, what does that do for me? If I don't get what I ask for, what does that do for me? I'm going to come back to that next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.